Hey everybody, this is Kara,
And this is Ed,
and this is Your Day's Dumpster Fire, where we don't celebrate humanity's successes.
but its most fantastic failures. Hey there.
Yo,
Yo, so how's it going?
oh, not bad, can't complain. School started, so I'm very, very busy, but that's okay. How about you?
Yeah.
How's it going with you?
Oh, yeah, no, it's interesting. These past couple of weeks I've really seen the economy kind of take a dump. I'm seeing a lot of politics. I think we need to do an episode on politics. It's
Yes.
it's just so horrible right now what's going on in the news, especially like with the whole like 24-hour news media, like listening to CNN and Fox News argue about the same thing. They just word it a little differently. So yeah, I think we definitely need to do an episode on that because it's turning into a hot mess. So
I can agree with that. So there are things I think we should address
uh
within that episode.
yeah, that's going to cause all what it's just going to cause all sorts of issues too. The
Yes,
emails that we're going to be getting.
it's going to be nasty.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a wonderful episode. But first, I got to do my. I'm working on nuclear power plants and how they fail. I'm thinking that would be a. We'll do that one, and then we'll have to try to take a look at the whole political side of things because that's going to be a never-ending dumpster fire. I think.
If you go back into history too, it's just a continuous dumpster fire mess.
It's never been a dumpster fire that they've ever been managed to like put out,
No, it's
but
just been a constant.
inferno or at least simmering, like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, just like the simmering hot carl of a mess, like
Like the coals at the bottom of your dumpster in Illinois when your dad set it on fire.
yeah, who knows, that thing probably still is on fire. But boy, speaking of trash can fires or literal dumpster fires, do I ever have a trash can fire for you?
Let's hear it.
Alrighty. So some people may know, but I do have a job. I work in transportation, the trucking industry to be more specific. And my company that I work for bought another company that does LTL or less than truckload. So these are short haul, multi stop deliveries. And we had a driver up in the Pacific Northwest that worked for this company that was bought, and we needed to get that driver down to basically San Diego. So I booked this load for this company to haul because that driver was going to go down to San Diego. And then from there, he was going to do something in the range of like 30 loads just down there, just, bouncing all over San Diego and making all these deliveries. So, long story short, I didn't set the delivery appointment for that load that I booked to get that driver down to San Diego. And one thing led to another. The driver showed up yesterday and the receiver was closed.
In San Diego?
So in San Diego, yeah, because I didn't set the appointment and didn't specify that it is a Monday through Friday type of receiver. Yeah, so basically the driver got there was nobody there, he called it in, and I was thinking, all right, cool, let's just take it to one of our yards and just drop it there, and then he can go on to his other loads, which, you know, 30 loads after that, over the course of a couple of days. Well, it turns out that since this company is so new to our company, he couldn't go to a yard, and he literally has to sit on this thing all the way until Monday, hoping that we can actually get a delivery appointment same day. And as a result, that caused us to fail 30 loads afterwards because we don't have another driver in the area. So,
Ouch.
yeah, very, very costly mistake. And it really sets a good precedent for this company that we just bought. Like, hey, here we are. We're this massive conglomerate, and boy, do we have our stuff together. unless you need a delivery appointment. No, we don't have that.
So long story short, for those of you who aren't as familiar with the trucking company, all you have to do is set a delivery appointment, and if you forget to do that, it's a massive domino effect because the receiver will refuse to take any kind of driver at any point in time, and it becomes an issue. And the driver just has to sit there. We still have to pay the driver, and that's including paying the driver gas and time. So yeah, that's expensive.
Yeah, not to mention too all those subsequent loads that he was going to run. Since we messed that up, we don't see any of the revenue for those other loads that we failed on. So we're basically just throwing cash in a dumpster and lighting on fire. So,
cool. So what do we learn from that, Ed?
I don't know, because I seem to keep making that mistake. Been doing it for 3 years now, and I keep screwing that up. It's I guess what it really amounts to is you have to go back and double check your work. If I had done that on Friday, it brought up everything and just see what's in transit, make sure that there are times for everything. It would have taken all of 10 minutes. It would have saved a very, very ugly conversation that I'm going to be having tomorrow with this other trucking company, that driver, and my bosses. It's going to be splendid. So yeah, if you see me pumping out episodes,
going to be splendid.
Well, if you see me slamming out like 3-4 episodes a week, that's because I'm currently unemployed and I need to make this podcast really take off.
It'll be the Ed show with Kara sprinkled in here and there.
Yeah, no, it'll just be me mumbling my way through everything. But yeah, no, that's how I ended my week, and that's how I'm going to start my week.
All right, straight in the middle of the fire. Let's go.
Right. So what do you got? What do you got coming up for today?
So for today, we are going to talk about the failure of Cleopatra, but we're going to twist it a little bit and talk about how written history has failed her as a person.
Okay.
I mean, she did fail. She almost had full power of Egypt and Rome, and then she died. So that was a failure on her part, but I think going through the history and then reading the Shakespearean poem, some of the older history written by the Romans, it's aggravating.
Yeah, I feel like they may have glamorized certain things, and then I feel when we look at history, especially how women are portrayed in history, we get it wrong. I feel like if you go back to the Romans, women can own property, women could vote, couldn't really hold a position of political status, but we don't recognize that women had a very much different role, or a more involved role in day-to-day stuff. But then, the Roman Empire collapses, and then we start looking at who's writing the history. And the people writing the history then really take away a lot of the attributes or the things that women were really doing back then to kind of put them in their place a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much. Then that's basically what happened. And I'm sorry if you hear my dog chewing on his toy in the background. So for this, we're going to mess up the order a little bit.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
Okay, I'm down for messing stuff up.
All right, good deal. So to start our lovely dumpster fire, we're going to talk about some of the written histories that were released after her death, and then we're going to go back to her birth and kind of talk about the most recent research that historians have done about her to kind of, go over the mistakes that were made previously, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So I'll start with the Shakespearean play, and don't get me wrong, listeners, I love Shakespeare and his plays, his history plays, I take with a grain of salt anyway. But when I went through this and kind of read the No Shakespeare, because I'm in the middle of making lesson plans and that's all I had time for, I was a little frustrated just because it was a lot of, Mark Antony wanted to do this, but Cleopatra said no because she was a mean lady. And it was Mark Antony was being a big baby about it, but Cleopatra said no because she's a woman and all this stuff. So it was a lot of Mark Antony was a sensitive baby, but he was a man, whereas Cleopatra was this controlling, conniving, mean lady, which is very broad and nutshell version of the play. If you really want to read it, go for it.
I love how like Shakespeare and history in general actually takes the word woman and means it as an insult.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Like, oh, yeah, you throw like a girl, or yeah, you're complaining, woman, stop. And I love how, I don't love it, but I find it funny how in Shakespeare's terms they would just refer to, a woman as, like your wife is woman. Well, they have a name. Come on, guys.
I know.
So Cleopatra.
So I think a lot of the things that growing up when I was younger, and I'm sure when you were younger, and a lot of other listeners, when they think of Shakespeare, they think of like this manipulative, conniving, sexual, like over-sexual person. And a lot of that just has to do with partially how Shakespeare interpreted it. And then the other hand, just the way the Roman Empire spun it. And the Roman Empire writings of Cleopatra, that started when Mark Antony was fighting for power against
Octavius?
Yep, thank you. Against Octavius. There was a lot of propaganda coming out about Cleopatra and Mark Antony that was wrong or incorrect, and it showed them in a really bad light. And that just continued even after their death for both of them.
Okay.
So just most recently, researchers and historians have started to look more into the primary resources and looking into who Cleopatra actually was as a person, as opposed to going off of like the Shakespeare or off of just the Roman writings, the propaganda, and they're trying to look past it to see who she actually was. And there's actually been some really cool findings about her, and I would like to go over them in a nutshell. I'm not going to go too far into it just because it is a lot. There's a lot of details, there's a lot of things that we could talk about.
But you got to set the record straight.
But yeah, I feel that the dumpster fire in this is not Cleopatra failing to take Roman power. I mean, it could very well be, but I want to focus more on how we look at history in this particular situation.
Okay. So what's the latest and greatest in the research? What are they discovering?
Yeah, so let's get into it. So Cleopatra grew up in Ptolemaic Egypt. So the Ptolemies, if you don't know who they are, they were a Greek family who came from Alexander the Great's right-hand man. So Alexander the Great's guy was set in the city of Alexandria in Egypt, and then that's where they came from. So the Ptolemaic dynasty lasted about 300 years after the founding of Alexandria, and they were not a fun family to be a part of. I will say that it's like a very odd mixture for those who are Game of Thrones fans. It's an odd mixture of Targaryen and Lannister mindsets.
Ooh.
So the Ptolemies are known for having a lot of incestual marriages to keep their line pure, and they would also consistently fight and murder each other to get the throne. So it was just a constant battle of siblings and family members murdering each other and being awful to each other just to get the power for the throne. And it was 300 years of this madness.
You know what's so funny is that America is a very young country. I mean, could you imagine having America be run by a family for 300 years?
No.
That's such a long time to be.
It is a long time.
And the way you make it sound like is they're all a bunch of inbred genetic disasters.
Yes. And the funny thing is they're Greek. They're not even native Egyptians.
Oh, wait, so Cleopatra has Greek ancestry?
Cleopatra's Greek, yes.
I had no idea.
So she, her lineage is from Greek descent, but she grew up in Egypt.
Okay. Huh. I because you see in the movies or the plays or whatever, they portray her as Egyptian,
right.
but
that's
darker skin,
something that people...
black hair, that whole thing. But now I'm envisioning somebody who would look drastically different.
Yes, and you can find coins and things from the time period of her face on them. It's a side profile, but that's where we often get her appearance, inspiration for her appearance. is from the money of the time when she was ruling. So if you ever want to look it up, I'll add some to the show notes if you want to check those out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she grew up in Alexandria. So she did grow up in Egypt. Her family is Greek. And then growing up, this is how she grew up. She grew up in this very tumultuous, murderous type of thing. So if you can imagine, she's probably paranoid all the time. And at the same time, she's learning how to be smart and clever and foxy, like,
Conniving.
Conniving. You have to be, that's just how you're going to survive. She did have a royal education. She was educated in math, politics, and it said that she could speak up to 7, almost maybe 8 languages, depending on who you ask. So she was a very, very smart person. She wasn't dumb.
And I'm sure she probably knew English, right? Like in all Shakespeare's plays, she always spoke English.
I'm sure she did. I don't have like a list of languages in front of me, but maybe that was one of them.
I don't even think English existed at that time. I think
it was likely Latin.
Yeah, probably a lot of Latin, and then I don't know, maybe Hebrew. I don't know all the languages that were around at that time.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I didn't go that far into it. Now I want to. That'll be a black hole to go down later. Fun fact, Cleopatra was the last ruler of ancient Egypt before Rome took over.
Okay. Well, how did she come into power? Like, how did she, was she, I don't know, like, did she, like, murder her way into that spot? Or, how did she get there?
Yes and no. So her father was Ptolemy the 12th, and when he died, he passed his royal duties to Cleopatra the 7th when she was 17, and her younger brother, Ptolemy the 13th, who was 13. So what he did was he split power between the both of them.
Okay.
Back in Rome, a general named Pompey and Julius Caesar were at war for power, and Ptolemy's advisors wanted to back Pompey, and she did not. She didn't say it. She was not loud about her opinion. So her brother advisors, because he was very young, so mostly his advisors were doing a lot of the work, and her did not agree on which general to back in this war. And that's very important because Rome was young at the time, but they knew that if they had Roman backing, then they would be set.
Yeah. Well, I know a little side note, I do know that Pompey and Caesar were actually 2 parts of a thing called the triumvirate. And the third person was Marcus Crassus. And the 3 of them worked together years prior to defeat Spartacus. Like, that's how they actually got into power. And then when Crassus died, I think he was ambushed and something about being shot with like 700 arrows or something like that. Then it was Pompey and Caesar. They were 2 consuls, and obviously, Caesar was coming in from France. He had his major army, and then Pompey had his army, and I think if I remember correctly, like, he just hightailed it out of there. Like, I think, didn't Pompey go straight to Egypt?
Yes and no. We'll get there.
Okay.
So when they were disagreeing about this, Ptolemy became afraid that Cleopatra was going to try and take the throne from him, and he got super paranoid. So what he did was he exiled Cleopatra when she was 22 years old to Syria. So she escaped to Syria. And when she got there, she wasn't going to sit on her laurels. She was like, I'm not going to take this. So what she did was she raised her own army, and she was going to take Egypt back. So kind of like Daenerys Targaryen, where she freed slaves, and she did everything she could to get people on her side over in Syria. So she's building her own army over there while Ptolemy's hanging out in Egypt.
So she had like her own Dothraki and...
Yeah. Basically. It makes me wonder where George R. R. Martin got some of his inspiration for...
it wouldn't surprise me. Because right? You look at their fate. Look how they both ended up.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Spoiler alert for you Game of Thrones fans.
Anybody who hasn't finished it.
So like George R. R. Martin.
Yeah. Pompey was still fighting Caesar, and eventually he did go and seek refuge in Egypt. Ptolemy the 13th basically told him, yeah, come on over. We can have you hang out with us, and we'll protect you. When he got there, Ptolemy the 13th and his advisors had his head cut off, and they gifted Pompey's head to Caesar. So they backstabbed him and decided to side with Caesar and killed Pompey. It was a whole thing.
And if I remember correctly, Caesar was not pleased about that.
He actually was. He was super excited about that. He was like, great, thanks. This is awesome. I'm going to come and visit you. So Caesar visited Egypt to say thank you to Ptolemy. And this is where Cleopatra comes in. Cleopatra hears about this. And if you remember, she wanted to side with Caesar from the beginning. So the story goes, and I actually fully believe it, is Cleopatra was smuggled into Alexandria because she was still technically exiled. She hid herself in a burlap sack, and it looked like a traveling sack where they would, put grains and food in for deliveries. What they would do is they take these sacks of grains and drop them off in the palaces. So she hid in one of these sacks, and she was dropped off inside Caesar's room. So when Caesar got there in the guest room, she came out of this burlap sack, and she was all luxurious and glorious. She made an entrance, right? Amazing.
Literally delivered.
She was literally delivered. She liked the dramatics,
okay,
as you do, you do. So Caesar was very taken by this, and she kind of worked her way into Caesar's heart, and they had an affair and the whole spiel. So their affair actually began a war between Ptolemy and Rome. They call it the Alexandrian War, and the reason for the war is just because Ptolemy and Cleopatra were already at odds with each other. So Ptolemy felt that, hey, you took my ally, that's messed up, and then they started fighting each other. Which
like a civil war type of thing?
Yeah, kinda, except it was Cleopatra in the Roman forces and then Ptolemy in the Egyptian forces.
Okay.
Yeah. So the war started before Caesar even left Egypt. He was on site, and then Ptolemy was like, F this, I'm coming after you. And Caesar was on his way to the harbor when they cut off their supply lines, and Caesar responded with arrows that were on fire, from what I understand, and they burned the Library of Alexandria. We're all gonna cry here. Everybody cry.
Oh, yeah.
Moment of silence for the Library of Alexandria. Okay, moving on. So
yeah,
Caesar's
Lord
allies,
knows what was in that library.
Can you imagine?
Jeez, yeah. I could, just, there's probably the ultimate instructions to building IKEA furniture is probably in there.
Maybe, The Secret of Life and Why It's 32.
Yeah. Or I thought it was 42.
Is it 42?
Yeah.
I believe you. We'll go with 42. I haven't read that book in a hot minute.
And there's the, who really built the pyramids, all the secrets to ancient aliens, and yeah.
Yeah, man.
It's a shame.
It is such a shame. Okay. So Caesar's allies joined him and Cleopatra at some point. After some time, when they were fighting in Egypt, they finally had their allies come and join them. And Cleopatra, with Caesar's army, defeated her brother and murdered him. So, yes, she gained power by murder from her brother after she was exiled. It's it's a maze. So Cleopatra is actually the first known woman to gain power by murdering somebody. Fun fact.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty cool. Caesar, back at home, did already have a Roman wife, so he had to go back, and Cleopatra did stay in Egypt at this time. However, Cleopatra was pregnant, which kind of complicates things a little bit. She named her son... I'm trying to find it if I wrote it down. No, this was important. Guys, I didn't write it down. Well, she named him after Caesar.
Okay.
And
is that designed to give validity to this, basically the future ruler of Egypt? Was that the reason why she named it after him, or do you think it was I couldn't think of a better name?
No, I think it was all a big plot by her, because she knows how it works. She knew growing up as a Ptolemy and her role as a woman that she would have to use the men around her in order to keep her and her family in power.
Okay.
And so she named her firstborn son after his father, Caesar. That does come back into play later. And also, she did not want to marry Caesar. because if she did, it would lose any kind of promise for power. Meaning, if she married, all of her power in Egypt would go directly to Caesar, and she would have none of it.
Hmm.
So she never actually married. I think she didn't even marry Mark Antony
Okay.
because
So
she wanted to
she did
keep her
not want to
power.
be attached to anybody then.
Correct.
She used them like, well, that does sound kind of conniving, Shakespeare.
It is a little bit conniving, but at the same time, she's just using what she could get.
Yeah, she was playing the game. Like,
Yeah,
she knew the
exactly.
game, and she was playing it to the best of her abilities.
Exactly. Which, I mean, let's be honest, she almost won the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she continued to rule, and her son was there. She continued to rule, and I believe her youngest brother, Ptolemy the 14th, had some co-power with her just because they didn't want her to be the full ruler, from what I understand. It was her last living brother. She did have a sister who I believe she murdered as well. Oh yeah, there's a lot of murder going on. So she murdered her brother, she murdered her sister, and she has currently a living brother at this moment in time. She has a son with Julius Caesar. I'm giving the rundown right now, so we're not lost. So right now she's ruling, she's chilling, she's happy. Caesar is back in Rome with his wife. Then Caesar's advisors got word that he had an affair with Cleopatra in Egypt, and they began to worry that he was going to be, I guess, tainted, or his role in Rome was going to be influenced by Egypt, and they didn't like that.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and Caesar was murdered by his own advisors. That is a wonderful story. If we all want to look up the politics in that, we can add that to the political discussion.
Oh yeah.
Stabbed.
What was it?
Stabbed in his throne room in the back.
Yeah, and he was stabbed like 23 times or something like that. It's yeah, that's actually, I think, the one part about Shakespeare that I think he kind of got for the most part right.
Yes, I can agree with that.
Was how he got done in, so to speak.
Yes, I can totally agree with that.
Oh, and I looked it up. Cleopatra's son was Caesarion. So Caesar with a Ryan at the end of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
and it's like 3 or 4 names in one.
Yeah, and then there's Alexander Helios, and then Ptolemy Philadelphus.
I believe those are Mark Antony's children.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know who founded Philadelphia.
Cool.
Ptolemy Philadelphus. Yeah, perfect. We got this history thing figured out.
Heck yeah, we do. We're good. We're fine. All right. So after Caesar was murdered, Cleopatra understood that she had absolutely zero connection to Rome at that point. So that means no Roman financial support or legal standing in Rome. And she knew that she needed to find someone over there to give her backing for her full power. That, because again, the key to power in Egypt is having power in Rome. She understood this, she knew this. And another fun fact, every Roman man who hooked up with Cleopatra, the Roman Senate freaks out and they want to kill her and her suitor. It happens every time. And this happened because Egypt was rich and they were powerful and the Senate was scared. So, very important, that comes back to bite her in the butt. After murdering her other brother, she chose her, and Caesar's son was chosen as her heir. So basically, she murdered her youngest brother, and now it was just her on the throne, and her son and Caesar's son were the heir to the Egyptian throne. So basically, she's like, cool, I have all this power, my family's in charge, but I still don't have full control because I don't have Rome, and I don't have a male backing. She knew she needed that male backing in order to get the respect of the people.
Now, how did the Egyptians view her, though? I mean, I have to imagine the newspapers. I mean, I'm assuming the literally the tabloids. I mean, how did they respond to her, or was it just like, oh well, looks like the Ptolemies are at it again?
From what I remember, like I said, I've started school, but from what I understand, it was like, oh well, the Ptolemies are back at it again. Here we go.
So it's like the Egyptian form of the Kardashians.
Yeah. Basically, except they were ruling the country, so that's kind of
Well, I mean, their Kardashians are kind of ruling the country now. If you factor in the amount of influence they have for like no particular reason.
fair enough. Fair enough. A lot of drama going
Yes.
on up in here. So Cleopatra knew this guy who was Caesar's general and his right hand man. His name was Mark Antony. Mark Antony was 41 and Cleopatra was 28. Supposedly, the story goes that Mark Antony got himself into a power struggle with Octavian, who was Caesar's son, I believe, if I remember
I thought it was
correctly.
his nephew.
Is it his nephew? I know he's related.
Yeah, because I don't think
My memory's fuzzy.
Caesar didn't really have an heir per se, and I think he was going to have Octavius basically replace him, but I think he was pretty young at that time, and so yeah, like he was kind of in the Roman side of things. Octavius was just kind of like on the sidelines for the time being. But then, yeah, if I remember correctly, then those two got in, Mark Antony and Octavius. They started going at it for control.
Yes. So those two started going at it for control as soon as Caesar died. And Cleopatra knew Mark Antony, so she decided to go with him,
Okay.
I guess. And it was decided after a lot of propaganda and war and battles and more propaganda that Mark Antony and Octavian would split the empire. So Mark Antony would rule one half and Octavian would rule the other half, right?
Okay.
So the way they met is Mark Antony took a trip to Egypt to talk about an alliance and financial backing because Egypt was the money pit back then. They had all the monies. And she played super hard to get until until he sent a message to her. And she knew that he needed her more than she needed him. So basically, she knew that Mark Antony needed her influence and her money and her power in order to keep his side of Rome afloat. So she played super hard to get, and she's like, I don't need you. But she really did. When she visited him in Rome, she arrived in a super fancy boat, and this is a very famous image, and in a very fancy dress, like to the nines. She wanted to impress this man after playing hard to get for a while. So she had to make sure that she was indispensable. She wanted to wow this guy, and she did.
So I was like, so with Caesar, she popped out of a burlap sack. With Mark Antony, did she like pop out of a birthday cake or something like that, or
she just kind of rode up in a fancy boat in her best dress and tried to just impress him with how much money she had, because that's what he needed. He needed her money, and she knew it. So she basically flashed it in front of him.
Well, something to keep in mind about Roman economy is that they didn't really make money. The Romans collected wealth by conquering lands. So they just absorbed everybody and everything into their economy, and they didn't really have like a financial, like they didn't have a bank. They didn't have a bank that would say, okay, this is going to be worth, this value. Kind of like we have, like the federal government has that treasury that will determine how much something is worth, or that currency. The Romans didn't have that. They had to take lands, or in this case, ally with Cleopatra, because that's where all the gold was.
Makes sense. Actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when the Roman Empire finally did away with slavery, that is what essentially killed their economy, because there's people who had to make money. Like, you had to pay them now. And that was actually in the American Civil War. When the slaves were freed, suddenly that was a huge amount of people, millions of people, that all now had to partake in the currency at that time, and it was an economic nightmare. I'm not jealous of the people who had to figure that out. And it looks like Cleopatra, she had that figured out. She knew exactly that I can finance this guy. Yep. Almost like she would be his sugar mama.
Yeah, that's exactly what she did.
Nice. Well done, Cleopatra.
Right? Like, say what you want. She was really smart.
I guess you could say I did the same thing with my wife, because my wife's a biochemist. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, she can fund me. Well, I work in transportation.
It's fine. We're fine.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. So at this point, Antony was married, and that was actually a really good thing for Cleopatra because, again, she was trying to avoid any kind of formal attachment or marriage while having the legal backing of Rome and ruling Egypt. It was good for her. So she was happy. The wife, probably not so much. Probably not so much.
Yeah. But I mean, let's face it, though. I mean, we look at Roman politics. Was anybody really married?
No.
I feel as though that, yeah, there was marriages, but all the wives knew that their husbands were out doing other people all the time.
Oh yeah. I feel like that was probably just a given.
Yeah. So she probably, Mark Antony's wife was probably like, I don't know, obviously irritated by this, but it's probably like, not surprising.
Yeah. So during this time, the agreement was basically Cleopatra gives Antony ships and grains. He gave her more land, and he protected Egypt while co-ruling Rome with Octavian. So she gave him ships and grains. He gave her an army and land, which I feel like that's kind of lopsided, but whatever. Word got back to Rome that Cleopatra and Antony formed an alliance and that she was pregnant with his children. This caused another problem in Rome. They went back into civil war. Mark Antony's first wife passed away, and in order
is
to
that done in air quotes? Like,
no, she really died.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, like she for real died.
It wasn't like poisoned or.
No, I think she was ill.
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
Gotcha. So it's the whole, just living in 0 AD
times. Yeah.
You just died. You just died of dysentery.
It happens.
Yeah.
Like sucks, but it
Yeah.
The lifespan was maybe 30, which I would be dead in a matter of 2 months. So
I would have been dead 9 years ago.
Now everybody knows how old we are.
Yes.
So in order to fix the division between the two sides of Rome, Antony and Octavian, Antony married Octavian's sister to create the alliance between the two, which is a very common thing to do all the way up to, I would say, even past the Renaissance, especially for royalty. In the meantime, in Egypt, Cleopatra gave birth to twins, Mark Antony's children, and Antony began to give more land to Cleopatra in order to try and rule them all through her and avoid war. So he was basically giving Cleopatra land and soldiers and like, here, just take care of this. I don't want to deal with it. Take care of it.
Yeah,
Octavian won't go to war with you
to fight a war.
Yeah, like he won't touch you. He'll go after me, but he won't touch you, right? That was like his thinking.
Okay.
Unfortunately, had the opposite effect, and Octavian just kept going after him in the land, and that made Rome even more mad and just more of a volcano about ready to burst. And then he also began claiming the twins as his own publicly, which caused a lot of friction in the Roman Senate and in the Roman public. Like, yeah, but you're married. It was like the whole two-sided sword thing. You're married to this lady. Like, it's terrible.
They gotta just try to figure this crap out, and then here's, great, Octavian is up to his antics, and then, man, Mark Antony, can he just stop? Like,
yeah, like, stop boasting.
Let's get back to like trying to fight off the plague in the city. Like can we focus on that for a minute?
Yeah, like, dude. So in an effort to gain even more power and respect, I guess, Antony was sent to take over Eastern Europe and parts of Asia by the Roman Senate. I think the Romans did that just to get rid of him for a little bit.
Yeah. Just to get out of the limelight a little bit and maybe get yourself killed.
Shoo him away for a while. It didn't go well, though. He lost.
Oh, good.
He lost really bad. And here's where the failure of history comes in, and take what Romans say with a grain of salt. The Roman people and Roman historians blamed his loss on Cleopatra, saying that he loved her so much that she emasculated him by using Egyptian magic.
Very scientific.
Oh yeah, it's good. That's
I do know like there is all sorts of myths and legends and superstitions. Like Roman soldiers were encouraged, like, hey, don't hook up with any women the night before there's going to be a battle, because it will take away your aggression, it'll take away your ability to fight. And so I do know that, yeah, if you did hook up with somebody the night before, it would be that woman's fault for taking away his masculinity.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like Marcus Crassus, when he was fighting Spartacus, he had his own entourage. He had his own forces, but women were not allowed into the encampment. The women had to be like so far away, and Crassus would not allow anybody to do anything with them prior to a fight, for fear that the women would take away their ability to fight, because science.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Yep, women in history always coming out on top, I suppose.
Oh yeah. So, Antony's escapades in Eastern Europe and Asia were so bad that he never returned to Rome again. He stayed in Alexandria with Cleopatra. Propaganda and Roman slander in the state were so bad that he just stayed in Rome. The propaganda were harping on the fact that Cleopatra kept him in Alexandria. So it's not that, Antony was embarrassed or that he just lost so bad that he couldn't face it. It was just the fact that, Cleopatra just wouldn't let him leave. And I know that Shakespeare kind of takes from that a little bit.
Yeah.
If you read it. So Cleopatra kept him in Alexandria and all this stuff, and she really didn't.
Almost like
just
a pet.
Didn't want to face it.
Like I feel like the way that she was portrayed is, Cleopatra had this ultra negative influence on Mark Antony, almost like a parasite. And I feel like that's how she was portrayed, is like okay, yeah, man's desires, well, it's her fault that he's turning out this way. And I think to a certain extent that still exists today, where women can have such an influence over men to the point where they'll start making really, really bad decisions. So yeah, I can kind of see where that's coming from. But again, at the expense of Cleopatra, like she's trying to play this game here, not necessarily keep a boy toy,
right,
so to speak.
Exactly. Like she's trying to, honestly, the way I look at her is she's trying to create a livable life for her children and her legacy in the best way that she knows how. So considering the way she grew up in a Ptolemaic family, that is all she knows, is getting power is equal to staying alive. And she wants the same for her children. That's how I see it.
See, to me, that just blows my mind, because I don't know about you, but I don't wake up in the morning thinking about how am I going to survive the day.
Yeah. That's how she grew up. Imagine.
Yeah, it's just like literally you could expect a knife in your back at any time. And it's just, it's common as having toast with your eggs. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I've got 23 hours left to go today to make it to tomorrow. Let's figure this out. I can't imagine trying to live like that.
Yeah. So you can argue that she caused all this drama and she manipulated the men around her. But if you really look at it through the lens of how she grew up in the world that she grew up in, can you really blame her?
Well, and it would be interesting to apply like the feminist lens, or apply some degree of psychology here, where I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is like she didn't degrade. I don't think she degraded the men around her to rise up. I think she tried to lift up the men around her, uh, like Mark Antony and Caesar and stuff like that to get what she wanted.
That's
And
exactly what she did. She just said, "Oh, you can get this power. You got
yeah,
this. You can do
like, hey,
this."
you need to take over these lands. Like, here's the gold, and last night was great. So yeah, let's keep this thing going. And then but she didn't. I don't get a sense like she degraded them,
No,
right? That's why I would really be interested to try to apply um, the feminist lens to this, or a psychological lens to it, because I think that would really determine how people perceive her. Because if she rose to power by, obviously she did kill a few people along the way, like her brothers and stuff like that, but she didn't go about it in a way that was demeaning to men. It was, she brought them up so that she could bring herself up.
exactly. That's exactly what she did, I think.
Yeah.
And it can be argued. Historians are still arguing things about Cleopatra today. It's very fuzzy, just considering it was a very long time ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's a few years ago. It's fine. But yeah, it's an interesting way to look at history, which is why we're talking about it. So after some time hanging out in Alexandria with his family, Antony had a campaign in Armenia and captured a few prisoners there. And what he did was he took those prisoners from Armenia, took them back to Egypt, and claimed it was a big, huge celebration, and it was a big triumph. And
It
when
was
he
probably
did
a
this,
village that he just took over.
yeah, it was probably something really stupid.
Like, yeah, he just killed like 50 men and then called it like the world's greatest battle.
Yeah, like it was ridiculous. So when he did this, he took them back to Egypt. He didn't go to Rome, and the Roman Senate did not like that. They felt it was very disrespectful to Rome. It should have been a Roman victory, but it was being celebrated in Egypt, and the Roman people saw this as a slap in the face to Octavian. Octavian, on the other hand, he was like, quote, "It was a sort of triumph, sort of triumph." So on top of this, in 34 BC, Cleopatra created a spectacle of having rule with Antony over the acquired lands between the two of them. So basically, they were through this big, huge, fancy celebration party in 34 BC because they thought they were awesome, and between the two of them, they had all this land. She was named the Queen of Egypt alongside her son, not Antony. They were also claimed to be the King and Queen of Cyprus, Syria, and Libya. Her next son was named King of Armenia, Nadia, and Parthia, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names. Her daughter was called ruler of Crete, Cyrene, and Libya, and her 2-year-old son was called King of Syria and Anatolia. And
Jeez.
basically, what that did is threaten Rome and Roman power. So this whole fancy, swanky party thing, the Romans took it as you're
Aggression.
just throwing salt in the wound. You're really
Especially, like, last thing you want is to lose a war against a 2-year-old boy.
yeah, like that's kind of embarrassing. So not only did they throw this big swanky party and all these children are being named rulers of these lands, new coins were minted, new titles were given. It was a whole thing. The Senate was very angry. Antony supported this big swanky party and running of things, I guess. That was bad wording, but whatever. And the Senate viewed that as an overreach of power on Antony's part. So, in the Senate, they argued over Antony and Octavian because they were still co-rulers. Antony is still ruling half of Rome from Egypt, and Cleopatra is now the center of Roman gossip. She's the center of all these politics in Rome, even though she's all the way in Egypt. She gained a horrible reputation in Rome.
Oh, I bet.
Octavian claimed that she used seduction and witchcraft for her own selfish needs. There's a quote here: "Female inconsistencies and hysteria." Everybody, roll your eyes. Female inconsistencies and hysteria. Oh my god.
I've heard the same thing even said today, like, oh, well, we can't have a female president because they're too inconsistent or they're too emotional.
Yep.
It has never gone away.
Yep.
Again, after all these years, we would have figured something out, but I guess not.
All right, so the event that broke the camel's back. All this stuff is happening. It's just throwing salt in the wound. They're basically teasing Rome. The thing that really did them in. Antony's will was released, and it included a letter of divorce to his Roman wife. Cleopatra was, of course, blamed. And he claimed Caesar's son as the heir, not his own. And he wished to be buried in Alexandria. So this will that was released to the Roman people was basically a separation from Rome.
Yeah.
And an attachment to Cleopatra in Egypt. And there is a lot of discussion amongst historians as to whether this document that was released was real or if it was more propaganda.
Now, was he dead at that time, or...?
He was still alive.
Okay.
So this was like a thing that was supposed to be a legal letter for when he died, to be saved until he died, and it was released somehow.
Huh.
And this started another civil war. And Antony was dependent on Egypt and Cleopatra entirely. Alexandria's navy was big, but it wasn't as powerful. So kind of like the Battle of Gallipoli, where their navy was super big, but it wasn't what they needed at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't thought out.
Yeah. And so when they went to war with Rome, they had a superior infantry, and they had a big navy, and they thought they could take them. When they were discussing this, it was very clear that they would lose. Advisors on both sides of the aisle were like, what are you doing? And a number of allies who began on the side of Antony switched over to Octavian's side because they knew that they were going to lose. It was that bad.
Jeez. I see where
Cleopatra
the dumpster fire part's coming in here. Yeah,
right? Cleopatra was blamed.
Okay.
She left the battlefield first, quickly, while Antony lagged behind trying to figure out what to do. And she left because she knew he was going to lose, and from what I understood, that she wanted to get her children out of the country because she knew that the Romans would go after them.
Yeah, they would be incessant. Like, they would just keep destroying until they got to those kids.
Yeah. And Antony was more invested in the military response than she was. I think that's why they think he stayed. And she would have rather just left and fight another day, and he just wanted to fight until he died.
Yeah, leader. Like, I feel as though Mark Antony sucked when it came to the whole military side of things.
Well, he was a general with Caesar. So I think just what happened was either he got soft or he just, I don't know, something happened.
It was Cleopatra's fault.
It was totally her fault, not his, but whatever. Every ally they had on the eastern part of the Mediterranean flipped on them because they knew that they would lose. Every single ally. Antony had to be restrained multiple times to prevent suicide. Cleopatra had to negotiate with Octavian because Antony just sat in the corner and drank.
Oh, wow. So he's going downhill fast.
He's going downhill fast, and Cleopatra had to handle all of it. She talked with Octavian. Octavian told her that she would need to kill Antony in order to save her own skin. Okay. So Octavian basically gave her an ultimatum: kill Antony, save your hides, or, face the consequences. And then when she learned that Octavian would display her as a trophy in Rome after she died, she began to think about her own suicide.
Oh.
So historians still don't know exactly how this went down. There's a lot of talk amongst historians, but the general consensus is that she took a lot of time to find the right kind of poison. Some reports say that she tried them on different servants to find the least painful one. Wow. This is all Roman info, so take it with a grain of salt. When all was lost and they knew that it was just not going to happen, Antony stabbed himself, looking for like a hero's depth type of thing.
Yeah, like fall on your own sword kind of thing.
Fall on your own sword, exactly. That's what he did. And he was taken to Alexandria when he was still wounded to die there. After Octavian arrived, her oldest son fled and her children were held hostage with Antony. So at this point, they had all of her children. Her husband was, not her husband, but her love was dying. And she was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. And then she committed suicide. And we don't know how she did it, and it hasn't been historically confirmed at all.
I don't know about the whole suicide thing because she doesn't seem like the kind of person that would just give up like that. I feel like she would have focused on another angle, or she would have she would have thought of something other than taking her own life.
Well, the reason I believe it is because she had so much pride for herself that when she found out that the day she died, the Romans would parade her around like a zoo animal. F that. And where else is she going to gain power? She doesn't have the military backing anymore without Antony.
Yeah, I just figured
So
that
she was kind of in a corner.
I feel like she would have at least tried to make an arrangement with Octavian. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. That's a tricky one. So I've heard rumors or the legend like somebody put a snake in her bathwater or something like that. Yeah, I feel like the cause of death is probably very, very broad.
It is. It's very muddied and muddled. So, I mean, historians are still trying to figure it out. That's why I'm not going to argue anything. They did say that she indulged in a special bath and she wore her most fanciest clothes and she ate her best fruit before she died. One thing that I read in a book that I have, and I'll link it, was actually kind of a nice sentiment, was that the Roman Empire is what killed her. They sent her into a depression, an impending doom. I think that's fair.
That sounds like the Roman Empire.
Like, yeah, that's believable.
Because they really the Roman Empire is very good at psychological games.
Yes.
They would inflict fear to an extent where the opposing force would break down. And I think that's probably what they did is they presented themselves as this overwhelming juggernaut that would play psychological games with her, because let's face it, that's cheaper and easier than trying to stage a full-on war in Egypt.
Absolutely.
So,
and they were good at it.
Yeah, well, because again, that's how the only way they can make money is by conquering more lands, which is kind of funny because let's say the Romans took over the entire world, then they would collapse because they're a few years away from making spaceships, but their growth philosophy was very flawed in that once you have everything, you can't be self-sustaining.
Right.
So one way to look at it is like this: you're breathing, right? Now you have to breathe in air for your body to keep going, but unless you exhale, you're going to ultimately die from CO2 poisoning. And that's what the Roman Empire did. They were just one gigantic inhale, but they never exhaled, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
And so yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. Like the cause of death was the Roman Empire.
Yeah. So with all of that being said, that's the most recent research that I was able to find.
Okay.
And it's actually pretty enlightening and very interesting, and it kind of gives you a different perspective on Cleopatra as opposed to the Roman Shakespearean grain of salt, kind of almost insulting version of her.
And I think that with any historical figure, every human being is very dynamic.
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast about Jack the Ripper. We tend
to our friends on Morbid.
Yeah, name drop.
Name drop. Hey guys.
Please don't sue us. But no, what I liked about it is that we hear in the history books that Jack the Ripper killed these prostitutes and that's pretty much it. No, these people, these sex workers were actual human beings with dynamic backgrounds and their own motives, and I feel like we lose sight of that. We lose sight of that when we look at someone like Cleopatra. We've painted a picture of her, and then that's it. She's two-dimensional. And so, to understand some of the background and what she had to deal with makes perfect sense. Why she did what she did.
Right. So that's why I wanted to kind of focus on the historical dumpster fire failure of Cleopatra as she is portrayed, and then go into actually who she really was.
So what's the takeaway then? Like, what's the what is it that we learn from this this story or this case? I feel like it's a almost like a cautionary tale.
I feel like I gave you 2 dumpster fires in one, and I'm sorry about that. Because her life of just trying to gain power as a whole is a giant dumpster fire, but then at the same time you have the historical dumpster fire and the fact that she's been just portrayed incorrectly for such a long time, I feel. And I'm totally down to have like a Socratic discussion. Please tell me if I'm wrong and let's talk about it.
And if anybody knows what actually what the actual cause of death was, I'm all ears.
Oh yeah, let us know. Like, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, if you've got like a grandma or a grandpa that was around at that time,
Yeah.
Let us know.
But looking at the historical part of it, this is 1600 and some change years before the first Queen Elizabeth. And if we look at Queen Elizabeth historically, she gets a lot more praise.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of had some of the same moves as Cleopatra, but I think she probably did it a little more gracefully and a lot less blunt than Cleopatra did. But and I find that very interesting, and just the fact that look at the people who wrote the history.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I would love to see, maybe I'll just have to write it, but I would love to see you read an essay to compare and contrast Cleopatra and Elizabeth I. That would be lovely. But
yeah, I'm sure that's like a PhD dissertation right there.
Let's write it.
We'll get our PhDs just from that one paper.
Yeah, let's go. But yeah, no, it just goes to show like how history is written, how we learn history, depending on the lens that we look through. It can be very enlightening, and it's an ever-changing thing. Kind of like how science is ever-changing, but in a different way. Science is ever-changing in the fact that you look towards the future. History is ever-changing in how you look at the past.
Well, and I like the point you bring up where it's like who writes the stories, right? Growing up, I lived with my grandparents in a retirement community, and I knew a lot of people who fought in World War II, and there was actually there was a couple of German guys there that obviously fought on the German side, and it was always interesting to get their perspective on that war because since the Americans won, we get to tell the narrative. We get to tell the world why Germany was so bad. But these German soldiers, they legitimately had no idea the Holocaust was going on. They had no idea what was really going on behind the scenes. They were handed a gun and they were told to go fight for Germany, and the Americans are invaders, and the propaganda told that. And so like I would be curious to maybe do like a thought experiment. Let's say Germany did win that war. How would they have portrayed America? My guess is it'd be a bunch of capitalist imperialists, just they would portray as something as subhuman. We did the same thing with the Japanese in World War II, where it was an easier way to kind of degrade because the Japanese soldier looked different than the Americans, and so from the American perspective, they were dehumanized. And I feel like whoever writes the history can really let down the future if they don't portray it accurately.
Right. And that's why history is so important.
Yeah,
that's why your sources and where you find them are so important.
Yeah. Well, and it's your opinion too. Well, I mean, you gotta have to like take out the whole emotional thing and try to understand history without trying to put in your own bias. And it's impossible. It's always going to happen.
It's hard. Yeah.
But no, that was pretty cool. I was really curious to see how you're going to take the whole Cleopatra thing, because obviously I didn't have my facts straight, because I had my opinion walking into it, and boy was I, a lot of misconceptions.
Yep. And I think a lot of people do have misconceptions about that particular point in history, just because of the way it was written.
Yeah. Man, only if we had Facebook or Twitter back then.
I know, right? It'll all be cleared up. Or honestly, it'd probably be worse. Imagine if the Roman Empire had social media.
Well, they did have um, they had boards. I know in Rome they had basically these boards where you could post stuff on there. You were able to
Colosseum's covered in it.
yeah, like you could write your own political piece and you can post it on this board and people can interact with it and obviously the all of that has been lost to history, but I think it would have been really fascinating to one learn how to speak Latin or Roman or Italian or whatever it is they spoke back then and just go and read those boards. I bet you anything would be very similar to like a political argument in Facebook.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure you could find translations and stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually going to look that up.
Yeah, you should look it up. I'll look it up later. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, that was great. And then yeah, I'm going to be working on something a little bit more recent. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to be working on the epitome of a dumpster fire where you get that phone call in the middle of the night. You're like, "Hey, boss, what's going on? Reactor 4 just melted down and exploded. Oh, yeah, there's radioactive graphite and there's toxic amounts of radiation leaking into the groundwater, and people are going to be dying here from radiation poisoning.
We go into Chernobyl.
I will be bringing up Chernobyl. I'm going to be bringing up 3 Mile Island. There was a meltdown in the 1950s. And what I'm going to look at is okay, you look at how Russia or the Soviet Union handled a nuclear meltdown versus say how the Americans did it, and even like the Japanese during the whole Fukushima thing. And it's interesting to see how different countries handle those dumpster fires. And we're going to look at what kind of went into it, where the failure happened, the ramifications of it, because yeah, nuclear power is very much a double-edged sword. It's for the most part clean. I mean, yeah, you've got the waste part of it, but for the most part, it's clean. It's very efficient. It's very effective. These nuclear power plants are like commissioned for like 75 to 100 years at a time. So yeah, they're designed to last a long time. But boy, when they go bad, it's awful. It is. So yeah, the next episode will be a little graphic. I'm going to be going into the effects of radiation poisoning, how it actually messes you up. Yeah, we're going to be diving into nuclear reactors because we can.
All right. Sounds like a big giant dumpster fire.
It's gonna be a heaping one. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out here shortly. And yeah, guess we'll catch y'all next time.
Thanks, guys.